Uh, One of our parishioners, a very, very kind-hearted lady, uh, she she takes in abused dogs, and now this part sounds a little crazy, but let's face it, people are crazy. Um, she takes in these abused dogs, and when one of her dogs is about to die, she calls me so I can go over and pray over the dog before it dies, which really is kind of odd if you think about it, but I just think it's this great act of love. She loves these dogs. And so 2 weeks ago, one of the dogs was dying, and so, I go over and I say a blessing over the dog, and this has happened before. It's so cute because you have this old dog and the tail is wagging and I'm saying a blessing over it, and then it licks me on the face. Um, and it really is like a puppy. It's just happy to see me. But it was an abused dog, and I just love the fact that it dies happy, even giving me some kisses. And that kind of ticks me off for this reason. I have prayed over hundreds of you people, and not one of you has given me a doggy kiss. But so anyhow, it's just kind of cute when the dog's on its last four legs. She calls me over, and I do that. But afterwards, she says, and you can figure out what's going to happen. She says, "Do you want to see the new dog I just got who was abused?" And okay, you know what's going to happen. So she says, "Well, I have to keep it in the bathroom caged up because it still has problems." So she opens the bathroom door, and this dog goes wild. It's like I'm a cat for dinner, and it's just growling, snapping, and it's like, okay, had enough of that. And this is the amazing part, how she gets these dogs who, they do have to be kept in a cage because of their abuse. She gets them when they're full of anger and fear, and yet by the time they die, they become like happy puppies. And it's actually kind of beautiful that after years of being exposed to this woman with a huge amount of love in her heart, they kind of return to puppyhood before they die. It's actually beautiful. In this odd way, that is a great analogy of why we celebrate Christmas, the Feast of the Incarnation. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but think about this. Why did God take on human flesh? That we celebrate that God the All-Powerful took on human flesh to show us what it means to be a human being. That for whatever reason, our humanity was broken or lost. We're like the abused dog. We're like the abused dog, and we live in fear and anger, and yet a lifetime of being exposed to Christ returns our humanity, that hopefully we can die newborn puppies. We regain our humanity. And so the story of Christmas is this. The reason why God took on human flesh is that we're the ones who lost what it means to be a human being. That God takes on human flesh, love becomes incarnate to regain us from being these abusing human beings. That's why, the first reading says, this child to be born, the way of, the taskmaster, the rod, the way of punishment, that will end. The way of war, and, every boot trampled in war, every cloak rolled in blood, that will be done away with. What we'll have is our humanity back. God will restore, with our humanity, we truly become one community again. And not only us and our community will be restored, but the idea is this child will restore our religion as well. Because before Christ, we did have religion. But all religion really can do is give you rules and regulations. And that just can convict you of what you've done wrong. For, the abused dog in the bathroom, giving it rules and regulations and punishment, it's not going to make it better. It needs exposure to love. And so Christ came also to restore our religion. that our religion is supposed to be the way of love and compassion. And just because I think this is interesting, Andrew Newberg has done all these brain mappings on people who pray. And people who pray, you actually test out to be more compassionate. That after a lifetime of meditation and prayer, you do become far more compassionate. You have less stress hormones, the fear and anger parts of your brain don't light up as much, and you have more activity in your frontal cortex. Really, just by practicing religion, this religion of love. Now, there is a footnote to these studies, and they've done this. If your notion of God is that of love and you pray, you become more loving and compassionate with even complete strangers. But if your notion of God is that of the God of power and revenge, oddly enough, the opposite happens. The more you pray, the more your fear and anger parts light up. You become more of an abused dog. It'd be better, actually, in that case, not to pray. And that's why, for me, I think this is amazing. Religion can really restore our humanity if it's a religion of love. And that's why I have a little problem with a lot of these Christmas movies. I actually don't really like Christmas movies. I know that sounds strange. But they make Christmas about, Christmas is for, those who are good. No, it's not. Christmas is for those who are broken, and at least recognize their brokenness. Have you guys seen It's a Wonderful Life? Really? Why is it that just this side that has seen it? What is wrong with you people? TV is your salvation. So you know that part, and I just hate it. When George is in trouble and all the townspeople pray for George, and they say, oh God, help George, answer this prayer, because George is the best man in our village. Our God, the God of love, loves George as much as he loves the worst man in Bedford Falls. It's God's nature to love. And we want it to be our nature to love regardless of who you are. They make it sound like Christmas is for only the good people. That's why, when I was a little kid, I just loved that song, The Little Drummer Boy. Do you guys know that song? I don't know. Love it, even when I was a little kid. I love that line, that he offers his best. And my favorite line is, I am a poor boy too. Christmas is for the humble. Now, I have to admit, just as a little offshoot, it is a very strange song if you think about it too much, which I do. Because, it says, the ox and the sheep kept time. No, little drummer boy, that's your job. You keep the time. I mean, animals are lousy at that. And then it says Mary nodded her head. No, she didn't. She just got the baby to sleep. She's not nodding her head. She's saying, no, stop, little drummer boy. But I know I'm getting weird. But Christmas is not for the, good. Christmas is for the broken. Technically, Christmas is for the humble. Because if you notice the Christmas story, who shows up? Who shows up at the manger but the humble? The shepherds. And I'm going to explain that. The shepherds symbolize humbleness. They're not perfect, especially if you knew their reputation, but they're humble. The humble are the ones that see flights of angels. The humble are the ones that end up before the manger. And why is it that in the Christmas story, Herod and the priests of the temple didn't go to Bethlehem? Because they knew, the wise men told them that the Christ was being born. The priests said, well, that's going to be in Bethlehem. So why didn't they go? And the answer is this: only the humble care to make the journey to the manger. And there's a great theologian, Bonhoeffer, during the World War II, during Nazism. And Bonhoeffer was this Christian theologian. And he gives a scathing Christmas homily. And eventually Hitler puts him to death. But he says, He says, why didn't Herod do it? Because those whose religion is about power and revenge, they never go to the humbleness of the manger. They're not interested in that type of religion. So Nazis and Hitler, they never will make it to the manger. Only the humble. That's why Herod didn't make it. Christmas really is for the humble. And if your religion, as I said, is about God being power and vengeance, you'll never understand what Christmas is about. Because Christmas is about regaining our humanity, not having dominance over other people. And so in the Christmas story, our religion is supposed to be about love. But God think about it this way. Of all the ways that God could reveal himself to us, great displays of power or literally coming as a king, God took on human flesh in the form of a baby, born to really a very poor family, incredible, homeless couple. God came to the poorest. And the idea there is that, when you see a baby, you fall in love with a baby. Even even the older I get, the more mushy I get. When you see a baby, who doesn't want to love a baby? Unless you're on a plane. But Christ comes to us. God comes to us really in the weakest, vulnerable state, which just elicits love out of us, not this need to dominate. And so the manger, at Christmas time, we're going to bless our manger scene. But the idea is this: we bless it, and all of you have shown up this morning. You played the role of the shepherd. In fact, on this Mass technically is called the Shepherd's Mass, because what the role you're playing is not the perfect, but the humble, who come to the manger because we can go to the low places. We want to go to the place where our humanity is restored. And so we bless the manger, and this is just technical. Manger technically is not a barn. People think it means a barn. It's not. It's a feeding trough. And this is quite an adorable scene. But think about, in truth, the manger originally would have been filled with the smell of sheep and donkey and cattle. It would have been, really quite a smelly place. And the manger, the feeding box, the feeding trough, it would have been covered with animal saliva. This is not a place where you want to put a baby. Clearly, Mary is a new mother. The real point is just how poor they are. But there's also this theological point that if you notice the prophets speak about the Messiah. When the Messiah comes, the Messiah, like Moses, will call down the bread from heaven. And with the bread from heaven, we'll be restored to our true human life. And there'll be this overflow of wine. So one of the signs of the Messiah is the bread that came down from heaven. Christ is put in the feeding box because he is the bread from heaven. Now, the real manger, if you haven't got it, is really not that. The real manger is this. That's where the bread from heaven is laid. That's what feeds us. And our idea is this, is that after a lifetime of being exposed to this religion of love, like the abused dog, we go from acting on fear and anger to true human beings, where what we offer is the way of love and compassion. After a lifetime of being fed the bread of life, what we gain is our humanity. So Catholicism is not about how to get up in the sky. Catholicism in the Incarnation is really about the gift of becoming a true human being, the way of love.